November 2025. So much opportunity to go really, really deep into our shadows, into our psyches, into our hearts, and really get below the surface. This episode, we're going to explore the planetary activity of November 2025, which is going to include, of course, we've got our beautiful full and new moon happening on the Taurus and Scorpio axes. And then we're going to continue to explore that water Grand Trine that's going to continue all month and actually into December. And then we have some outer planets, some collective shifting happening with Saturn going direct this month, Jupiter going retrograde, Aquarius sliding back into Taurus and what that means for us. And then we have our favorite little trickster energy back on the docket. We were resting a little while when it came to Mercury, but he will be doing his retrograde this entire month from November 9th to the 29th. Okay, let's hop into it. And I'm excited to explore all these topics in more detail. Start off the month with Mars moving into Sagittarius. This happens on the 4th, the day right before our full moon. And Mars moving into Sagittarius, when we think about Mars as the body, passion, how we take action, it's kind of that forward momentum. He's the warrior swinging the sword. He's our temper. He can be, just that fire within us, which is interesting when we think about fire. And here we are moving into a fire sign, mutable fire, Sagittarius. And then he moves into this really beautiful conversation with Pluto, who he will be sextiling. So there's some opportunity with these two to really be taking action around something, that you're holding deep within, and maybe haven't really felt clear on how to move with that when Mars was deep in the waters of Scorpio last month. So what's interesting about this is that Mars moves into Sagittarius, and right when he does that, he's got that sextile with Pluto, Lord of the Underworld, Hades, and then he's also opposing Uranus. And when he creates this opposition with the expect the unexpected planet, Uranus, over there at 0 degrees Gemini, this is a, how do I say this? Not to be fear-mongering. I probably wouldn't go like skydiving on this day if it was me. There's a higher propensity for accidents, just things kind of coming out of left field that can kind of slam you or surprise you. It's not always negative. It's just an expect the unexpected. Surprises, lots of surprises. And it's interesting because this opposition directly across 180 degrees across is creating a formation on the chart on the next day, because this will last a day or so, when we have the full moon happening. So on the full moon, we'll get into more specifics with the full moon, but there is what's called a cradle happening on the chart. And so a cradle it's where we have two planets directly across from each other, and then we have three sextiles creating this like half not octagon, whatever the 6 is, 6 pentas 5, right? Okay, so anyways, it creates this little shape here that is holding. It's a holding shape. And when we think about a cradle, what do we think about? We think about a baby, probably, right? And so being held by the cradle. And the shadow side of cradle formations can be a sense of helplessness, that you're like, can't do things for yourself. And there's something to be said about the planets that kind of contain the cradle, which that's again going to be Mars and Uranus with this opposition. And then we have this little shape of holding. And this is happening between Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. And then we have the opposition with Mars. And so there's like a possibility of this helplessness when it comes to the collective. Like, how do I take action when things feel so huge? And I just want to say, if you're feeling that, you are right on time. Like, this is exactly what is available with the cradle, because the other thing that comes up with a cradle can be a withdrawal, but in a self-purification way. Like, there's a safe holding within the cradle to really get clear with yourself around any action that you do want to take, and how to move with surprises and continue to stay flexible and able to pivot with all the things that we're being served right now. And I just feel like this is really striking coming in with that full moon. And so just want to put that out there, that there's some, it is a very stable formation or aspect on the chart. So there is this opportunity to really be held and finding that sanctuary within, so that you can go out with that clear sense of self and that confidence that can come from that Martian energy to take any action out in the world or in your community, in your relationships, whatever it might be, wherever you are maybe feeling powerless. Now, it is interesting that this full moon, we have Taurus and we have Scorpio. They're directly across from each other, right? Because when we have a full moon, we have the moon 180 degrees across from the sun. So the moon is being fully illuminated. It's big and beautiful. The night sky is so bright. There's opportunity to see in the dark. So when we bring this into ourselves, we're looking into our dark pockets, right? With Scorpio, let go, let die. With Taurus, hold on, hold tight. What is wonderful about being alive? I want all the things that make life wonderful. Excuse me. So we can see how there can seem to be a polarization, which is what we call it in psychology when we have two opposing forces, or how I see it as an IFS therapist or internal family systems therapist, is we have two opposing parts. They both want the same thing for us, but they have very opposite ways of going about getting that for us. So when we think about the sister signs of Scorpio and Scorpio and Taurus, what they're both working on is security. They want us to feel secure and stable. Scorpio's way of going about that is like, shed it all, let it all die, and then see what's left. That's your true essence. You will never lose that. You can always count on that, and that is always with you. But the only way you can get in touch with that, according to Scorpio, is to shed and release and release and release and let die and let die and let die. And then you merge with that true essence of self. And then you want to merge with other people's true essence of self. It's like that soul merging, really deep, 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 intimate spaces. Taurus, on the other hand, is seeking security and stability through materials of this earth. And so this is going to be things we can hold, see, smell, taste, feel, which I guess is the same as hold, all of that. And so there's also like this opposing piece around like Scorpio being the things you can't see. It's the deepest of the deep. It's the darkest of the dark. And we're tapping into extra ways of knowing. We're dealing with water. Fixed water is Scorpio, which is sensing and feeling. All the things that live outside of language and materials that we can hold. Whereas Taurus, on the other hand, very grounded, very concrete, very stable in when it has all of its things kind of grounding it down, very dense and heavy. So when we think about these coming together in a polarization, anytime we can get both parts to recognize that they have the same goal in mind and they both want the same thing, all we have to do is even just get one side to soften, and the whole dynamic begins to release. So when we think about this, Taurus also is resources, right? So we're talking food, money, and also love. Love is coming up. Taurus is ruled by Venus. She is our heart space. She is how we are processing emotions. And she's all about love. So this is a very loving full moon in that way. And also we have the opposition with Scorpio going, what if none of this is available? What if your food isn't available? What happens? Do you die? What if your money isn't available? What happens? Do you die? And Scorpio is kind of, a little lurky, kind of spooky in that way of like, just let it go. Whereas Taurus is like, no, thank you. I want all of my money. I want all of my food. I want all of my things. And so we want to, I don't think it's healthy to swing to just either side, right? It's like, where is that middle place of, yeah, of course we need some food. And I think that if you've noticed anything in the news lately, I mean, food insecurity in the United States is up right now. I mean, it is being revealed in a really loud way, which also makes me think about the cradle and powerlessness and, you know, geopolitical kind of atmosphere right now and how overwhelming that can be or is right now. And so Scorpio and Taurus, you know, are working this out together. I mean, they are, you know, this axis, and it's going to stir. It's going to stir those fears around money. It's going to stir your fears around resources, and it's going to stir fears around love, most likely. But it's also because the sun is what's the bright light, and it's over in Scorpio, it's able to shine in the darkness, right? We're getting more illumination into the darker pockets of self, down in the those deep emotional waters of Scorpio. And then Taurus, you know, one way to interpret this, Taurus could be like, and I'll bring the creature comforts for the journey. Like, I'll bring all the things that make us feel kind of cozy, even though we're kind of doing like a spooky mission. And there's a lot of opportunity for fear or emotional flooding that can come up. During this full moon, we had the ruler of the moon, Venus, because she rules both Taurus and Libra. She's actually in Libra. So she is feeling very diplomatic. She's feeling very resourced. She's very strong in Libra, very social, and wants connection, to initiate connections, maybe new connections kind of coming into your life that helps you with that Scorpio underworld, because we're not done going into the depths of Scorpio. This starts at the full moon, and let me tell you, it is a party by the time we get to the new moon, which happens on the 20th. So before we hop into new moon, let's talk about how the next day after the full moon, Venus slides into Scorpio. She's joining everybody else in these deep waters, which is, she's our heart space. This can just be maybe some more intensity around the emotions, okay? How we're processing our emotions. Common word used with Scorpio is penetrating. I mean, this is just like, it's very, very deep. So when we bring our heart space into that, when we bring Venus, our heart, into Scorpio, we're not shallow swimming is not an option. You are deep diving, and we're going to continue to do that. You will never get to the bottom of your psyche or your heart. This is a continual adventure that we have for those of us who are inspired or motivated to do these deep dives within self. This is a month where there is so much opportunity to know thyself on an incredibly deep level and intimate level with self. Okay. So let's see, let me peek at my notes. So she slides into, and I did have a note here. It's kind of like, and we know anybody sliding into Scorpio, not only are they kind of like whoosh, getting plunged into the deep waters, they're also meeting a square with Pluto, who is Hades, Lord of the underworld, who's like, come on, let's go. Let's go. It's time for you to be the phoenix, to just surrender to the burn, become ash, and then you will be born again. That's what Pluto is all about, transformation. He also has to do with power, control, and obsession. Okay, so our heart space, bumping into those themes, you know, whether that's going to be our experience of someone having power over versus power with, who in our lives has right power and is right with their power and make us feel empowered when we're in presence with them. And then also, how do we work with our own sense of power? And do we move into a controlling space out of fear that if we are not in total control, that something will be lost and our anxiety just can't handle that? So something just to note, that as she moves in, it's kind of like, slam, welcome to Scorpio, welcome to the underworld. And you know, we think about Persephone into the underworld and her going down with Hades, her being kidnapped and assaulted and dragged into the underworld. And ultimately, she becomes the queen of the underworld. So there is this opportunity for quite the transformation and transmutation of being dragged into this space and just feel completely gutted. And then how we rise from that and we find our power again, and we are able to move into a position of sovereignty when it comes to being in the dark. Okay, and so also we are going to have Uranus. Let's see, he's sliding back into Taurus. Okay, when I tune into this, Taurus again, we just visited that with the full moon, very grounded, very fixed, very stubborn in holding. And then Uranus is here to shake things up. Uranus in Gemini is much more activity, right? It's like pew, 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 pew. Gemini is already, such a fast moving zodiac script. So Taurus is, dare I say, the slowest move. Earth signs are the slowest. Taurus is the slowest of the earth signs. So this is the slowest moving, least appreciative of change zodiac script. And Uranus is all about like, poof, 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 knock it all down, let's rebuild. Something needs to change. And it's, again, stuff you don't expect. Some interpret this because when we're talking about Taurus, we're also talking about this Earth. Uranus is often like weather events, big weather events with Uranus in Taurus, unexpected things that change the terrain very quickly. Also, again, financial resources of this earth. We tend to really put a lot of energy and attention and power to the resource of money. So money being up, we also just mentioned food as a resource, and that being up with the collective, especially in the United States and in other areas of the world too. And so, just kind of that awareness. But I will say it feels like, I'm hesitant to say this, a slower pace. But Uranus does not move slow, and nothing is moving slow right now. So the slowest of the fast times, I don't know, for Uranus in Taurus. Take that, work with it if you want to. Toss it if it doesn't make sense or doesn't resonate. Okay, and so let's see. Then we have Mercury. I mentioned that at the beginning. Mercury starting his retrograde. Okay, so Mercury stops, turns around, and heads backwards starting on November 9th. And he's going to be in his backwards motion all the way until November 29th, where he will turn around again and head back forward. But when we're traveling, brakes on, and we go back. We're backtracking the trail that we just went down, going back, turn around, going back over that same territory again for the third time. We had to go back and get that thing that we left at the earlier point. And then eventually we will hit new territory that we haven't traveled yet. This zigzag motion, and I have it drawn as a graphic as a Z for you. There is the pre-shadow, which began October 20th. And it's like the pamphlet. It's like, okay, Mercury's like, this is what we're going to be working on during this retrograde. So you get the pamphlet. What are the themes, things that have been coming up when it comes to ideas, plans, communication, travel, and the other things that Mercury governs. He's Hermes, the delivering of messages, moving quickly, learning, processing, very cerebral, all in the mind kind of space. So that October 20th to November 9th, then he puts the brakes on, turns around, travels from 6 degrees Sagittarius all the way back. Here we are in that place, that territory where everybody is right now in Scorpio, back to 20 degrees Scorpio. So not to be hyperbole or anything, but this is probably going to be the messiest of the Mercury retrogrades this year. We do 3 a year. Mercury is not that big of a fan of Sagittarius, and that's where he starts his retrograde. Sagittarius script says, let's get that 40,000 foot view. Let's look at it from the top. Let's zoom as far out as we can zoom. Let's ask questions that can't ever be answered just for funsies. And Mercury's like, excuse me? Absolutely not. I need information. I want it to be black and white. I want the yes and no's. I want to study things. I want to master them. I do not want to philosophize. I do not want to ponder existence and go into existential places. That feels way too nebulous and floaty, void-like for Mercury. So Mercury is about details, right? He likes the specifics. And so when he's in Sagittarius, he was working really hard. So just keep that in mind this month. Thanksgiving travel plans might be coming up during this time period. If you recognize that holiday, stay flexible. That's the thing that we need. Which Sagittarius, that's one thing Sag is really good at, being flexible, just moving with whatever comes the way. So keep that in mind. I'm going to go deeper into Mercury retrograde in a later episode. Okay, but I did want to touch on that. Now, something else that is really important that's going to bring us to our new moon is going to be this Grand Water Trine that is continuing to flow. Grand Water Trine. We talked about this last month in a previous video, and this month it's here to stay. I will say we have a couple days, like November 6th to the 8th, where it kind of falls apart just because of the motion of the planets. It's really holding strong between the trine, the leg between Jupiter over in Cancer at 25 degrees and Saturn at 25 degrees, Pisces. That's holding strong. But like this other piece that creates the big blue triangle, the Grand Water Trine, that is in movement because that's going to be personal planets who are moving through the end of Scorpio. So it does fall apart. Once Mars hits Sagittarius, there's a couple days where it's like, oh, maybe I don't have to be so, I don't have to swim. I can go to the bank of the river for a little while, but just for a couple days because we have the sun coming right into that last decan of Scorpio. So something else that is important to note is, let me look at that date. Okay, so on the 11th at 25 degrees Cancer, because he's moving so slow, Jupiter is going retrograde. This is why this Grand Water Trine is so enduring, because Jupiter has slowed down where he is like coming in, coming to that pause, and then he's going to turn around and travel back through Cancer. So this, to me, is important to track because Jupiter always wants us to grow, right? We talked about that in the last video. We've got Saturn. He's like, work hard. If you work hard, I will reward you. His archetype is the father archetype, which is why we call him Daddy Saturn. He works us. He's like, you got to do it. He pushes us. He says no a lot. He teaches us through lack, through constraint, through delays, all of that. And then we have Jupiter that's like, oh, why do we have to work so hard? Let's just have all the abundance and blessings that just because you are a breathing human being, you are worthy of receiving all the abundance that you could desire. And so that's Jupiter's MO. And he just says, yes, 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 more and more and more. Now, I will say there is a shadow side to Jupiter, and this has to do with righteousness. When we're talking about righteousness, I'm talking about like judgment, getting into some judgment places. And something that I heard the other day that really just stuck with me and I loved it, it was from Lee Harris. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with him and his energy update. He said, all judgment is a lack of experience. And how true is that? I mean, anytime I've had some fierce judgments about something, and then life continues to serve as it will forever and ever as long as we are alive, and I eat a big huge piece of humble pie when I'm on the other side of that, and I'm like, oh, I was judging because I hadn't had that experience yet. And I think that that's such a wonderful reminder for when we're trying to transcend judgment, because there's also a sense of safety, right? There's an othering. You would do that like that. I would never. And then we are separating ourselves when we do that, the disconnect that comes in. And then we're getting into false hierarchies of who's better than and who's less than. And this is not real. This is not real at all. We all have the same skeleton. We all have the same bones moving around. There are no hierarchies. There's a fake, sense of that versus like that sovereignty. Our institutions tell us that there is better than, less than, higher than, less than. So many organizations are organized, with the top and the bottom. And there's a breakdown in that, I believe, that's continuing to happen, because if it's not truly, there's one thing for organization and things to run effectively and a point of contact and all of that makes a lot of sense. You don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, as they would say. And also, if it's not a structure and organization that's honoring individual sovereignty and holding that at the forefront, it's not going to sustain any longer. at this time. And that can be internal parts. We can have parts that we believe are better than other parts of ourselves. Okay, so this gets into, let me think of a good example. Well, okay, what about child parts who are so sensitive? I mean, here we are in the Grand Water Trine. This seems like perfect material to think about. You know, that those embodied parts, you know, our body, that's another thing. Like, we think our brains are so much more important than our bodies. And so what do? We micromanage our bodies. We judge our bodies. We try to change our bodies. We don't trust our body's healing capabilities. We, you know, and if we think about little parts who live in the sensations, or, okay, here, you know, happiness is the only acceptable emotion. And if you're not happy, then something is wrong and we need to change that. And all of a sudden we're judging our emotions, you know? And so if we have like an Eeyore part, this kind of like, everything sucks all the time, just going through the motions. And then let's say we have, thinking of the movie Inside Out, which is such a great visualization of parts work. And then we have a part that's like really enthusiastic about life. And we might overvalue one and try to repress another. And it doesn't work, right? That part, just because we ignore it, doesn't go away. Usually it kind of just grows and festers. Speaking of Scorpio, stagnation in that deep place, it's festering, festering, festering until we have a full-blown infection happening, and we have to now, like, we're in a full depression. The Eeyore part has come over. It's like, that's it. You haven't been listening to me. It's time to go. Or we have a tiny little crack that drips out some tears out of the dam. Just some tears, but we're like, I'm not looking at that. I'm not looking at that. I'm ignoring it. Oh, I'm so pathetic for being sad about that, or whatever the internal rhetoric might be. Well, guess what? That dam is going to explode and you're going to be flooded and washed away for a hot minute there if you don't acknowledge what's happening. And our emotions, while some, yes, are more exhausting and more draining, they are not good or bad. I will die on this hill as a therapist, as a human being with lots of emotions. They are just our messengers, letting us know what's going on internally or externally. They are amoral. But society has told us that, like, you know, happiness is the only one that we should be in all the time, which is bizarre. It's bizarre when you really think about it. So, okay, so when we're thinking about that shadow side of Jupiter and judgment, and you know, pride, humility, shame, these are all pieces of righteousness and judgment. So if we are holding a lot of unacknowledged shame, which this month is a great opportunity for you to get to the roots of some of that, as we are diving deep into Scorpio, which holds the depths, which, guess what, lives down in the dark? Shame. And it also has the most influence over us. It is the most powerful emotions that we feel as human beings. So we have shame, that, and our level of acknowledgement and knowing of our own shame is going to determine how open we can be to other ideas, other ways of existing, other people, sovereignty of other people, that they're doing their best and that they are living their lives, even if on the surface you're like, ooh, you know, obviously do not want to be causing harm and all of those pieces. And that's an interesting place when it comes to sovereignty around, like, even when you can see that somebody is like headed towards disaster and you can see it and you want to stop them and you want to be like, don't do it that way. Don't do it that way. You're going to crash and burn. You're going to crash and burn. Sometimes we really need to sit on our hands and let people have their experiences. And the most compassionate and loving thing we can do, and this is so hard with people that we love, is to let them have their own experiences, and that includes their own struggles, because that is the only way that we grow. I know I can say with 100% certainty, the things that have sculpted me in the past have been painful. That has molded me and sculpted me into the person that I am today. And I am forever grateful for those, even though I wouldn't choose it. I wouldn't say, give me more of that. But I've had, you know, those heavy experiences that have really broken my heart wide open and expanded me in ways I don't know if there's another way I could have done that. And that tends to be true for most of us. Even though I'll tell you, I'm always bargaining with the universe. I promise to learn through love and light. Yeah, right. No, I'll just sit on my duff. I'm too comfy. I'm too comfy if everything is feeling good all the time. I'm not growing and changing. You know when I am growing and changing? When I'm uncomfortable and I can't stay how I am in this way any longer. It is not sustainable. And so just putting that out there, as this water trine continues, because we also have the new moon in Scorpio, 28 degrees Scorpio. Okay, so the moon joining with the sun. Thursday, November 20th is the new moon in Scorpio at 28 degrees Scorpio. So when we're talking about those late degrees, we know each zodiac goes from 0 to 30 degrees or 29 degrees, 59 minutes. We're at 28 degrees. So this is a mastery level of the Scorpio mansion. This is very mature and advanced, so to speak. So we have the new moon happening where the moon joins the sun, dark night. Cannot see the moon when you're outside, you are in the dark. And then we also have that same day on the 20th, Mercury coming into the heart of the sun. And when planets come into the heart of the sun, it's called cazimi, which is a fun word to say. And they will say that like planets coming towards the sun get burned up in the sun's rays. And the ancients would say that they were sick, stressed, they have a fever. But then once we get into the heart of the sun, it's like there's this halo around the planet and it's so pronounced and it's said to be very auspicious. So this is a great opportunity for epiphanies and new ideas to come in and things to make sense and perspectives that really feel in service to become available. This is happening on the new moon. So, it's a couple hours apart because the moon moves so quickly, but it just feels so striking that we would have this happening at the same time. And we're in the Scorpio mansion at that mastery level. We are in the deepest of the deep. And I have a feeling that what we are excavating from the depths has to do with shame, because we have dark moon Lilith at 26 degrees Scorpio. So while she's not on top of these three, she's right there. And she's the dark feminine, and she is often represented as using shame as a weapon. So when we're talking about shame and what shame is and how we integrate and truly transmute shame, we are talking about a very slow pace. Slow is fast when it comes to this kind of work. And it's incredibly sensitive because shame is the most powerful emotion that we feel as humans. It is the most sculpting, if we're going to go with that earlier metaphor. It can create incredible transformations, typically not in service of wholeness. Our psyche will split, we will repress, we will become very fractured internally from shame. So when we are thinking about shame work, and these planets are right there at the late degrees of Scorpio because we still have that water trine, right? So we've got Jupiter that's like, you can grow, we can do this. And then we have Saturn over there. It's like, work hard for your blessings. And here it is, it's just flowing through, flowing. So the things that have been in us, that festering deep, still waters, there's opportunity for movement and clearing of this. Now, when we're talking about shame, because it is so activating, we want to do this in a way that is sensitive. And sometimes this means doing this with a professional, doing this with a therapist, doing it with someone who you trust, who knows how to hold space for you in a really loving, open way. And so whatever feels best for you, but this is, Scorpio is saying, like, let go and let die. What is it time just to release to the currents and let it just flow out? Let it go out. And shame, comes into that place of like, I am bad. I am unlovable. I am unworthy. And that's typically burden that we picked up at a pretty young age. And so most of the time, not always, we can have shame fracture us as grown-ups as well. But most of the time we're dealing with young parts in our system, and those young parts need a lot of gentle holding and a lot of care. I'm thinking about like from that full moon and the cradle and the baby, and then here we are at the new moon, and we're definitely dealing with little parts. So we think about parenting ourselves, as I mentioned in the last video, last monthly report, or we think about parenting our external children. Transparency is so powerful. sensitivity to how the other is feeling. Because children from age 7 and younger, but I would argue it's older than that for those of us who are more sensitive and more finely attuned in that way, we fill in blank spaces against ourselves. So for example, child is sitting there, mom kind of comes in the front door huffy, you spill your water, and she just like, her lid pops, she goes in her room, she slams the door. Child sits there and is like, I am awful. I can't believe I spilled this. I spilled this and I stressed my mom out so bad that she just can't even be around me. I am terrible. I am clumsy. I. The medicine, what a missed opportunity in that moment is if mom didn't feel the pressure that she had to like have it all together, and she can't be visibly upset, you know, in front of her child, or she can't share who she is authentically with her child because of these impressions we have around, like, if you're the parent, you've got to hold it all together all the time and you can't ever let them see you upset. So curious about that, where that came from, that belief. But had mom had a little bit more wherewithal, you know, and she's doing her best, so we're not going to fault. We're not doing parent shaming and blaming about this. That gets us nowhere. It just spins us on the same circle around and around and around. But the missed opportunity here was mom saying, "Ah, you spilled." I had a really hard day at work, and I got into a fender bender on my drive home. This is not about you. I feel really stressed out. I don't have it in me to like clean this up right now. I'm going to go in my room. I'm going to go get regulated. I will be back. I love you. This has nothing to do with you. I had a really, really stressful day, and everybody spills and accidents happen. And then mom goes, she takes a beat, she calms her body down, she comes back out, we clean it up, we move on. Guess what? Child never has this blank space to go, it's all me, I'm the worst. And then hold and have those crossed wires around worthiness and how lovable we are. And so as a parent, it can be really powerful to be transparent with your children. And trust me, they understand big feelings because they are navigating them all the time. So it can be so validating to them as a human being to know, oh, mom and dad have big feelings too. Or my caregiver, you know, has, you know, human hard days just like I do. And I think that that's really powerful for children to witness and to hear and to have the story to understand that this doesn't have to do with them. So that's external children. For internal children, when accidents happen, can we just acknowledge that an accident happened, that you're doing your best all the time, and that's all you can do is your best. And when stuff happens that's out of our control, or even when we did our best and it still went bad, can we take care of the little parts who come up in that moment, who will interpret that if we start to berate ourselves and we beat ourselves up and it's like, oh, I'm so stupid, or I can't believe I let that happen again, and like all of that really aggressive, hateful self-talk that can come up in those spots, versus a gentleness with self, right? A like, oh, this is so hard. This is breaking my heart that this has happened. And also we're doing our best, and that's all we can do. And I'm going to love myself through this. And then we move out and we clean up, repair, do our best in the aftermath of whatever accident has happened. But can it not, you know, can an accident exist and there's no one to blame? Now, I know there's systems who never blame themselves, who always blame others. And, you know, I don't think either side of this coin is very flexible or in service of soul growth and feeling confident and competent as we move through this world. So whether we're blaming everybody else for everything wrong that happens all the time, or we're blaming ourselves for everything, you know, for things out of our control that go wrong, where's the middle ground with that? Where is this acknowledgement of like, what does it mean if it's nobody's fault? And there's nowhere to land this tension. I can't like chew myself out inside, and I can't chew somebody else out. It's just, ooh, can we just hold this and be like, this sucks, and just be with it? That's hard work. I mean, it's nervous system healing, right? It's like, and again, slow is fast with this kind of thing. It's so subtle. It's like you arrive at a moment a year later and you go, wow, I didn't just like lose it on myself or somebody else when that happened like I think I would have a year ago. And We recognize we're a little more grounded, we're a little bit more expanded, our window of tolerance is stretched, and we can hold a little bit more, which is ideal. And I encourage you to, I think it's up. I don't know if we can head in the sand it. I mean, I think if you try to stay the same and you try to stagnate and you try to grip and hold with this Grand Water Trine and this new moon coming together and some beautiful movement of the deep, deep waters of your soul, I think you're going to exhaust yourself physically and psychically to kind of stay in those places. So I encourage you to let it flow if you can. And just go with the current. Let it continue to clear, just clearing you out, this flow. I said it last time, it's like it's a filter. The water's just moving through. This is in service so that you can move forward in your life with more clarity and confidence and courage in how you want to exist and be during a world that is changing really quickly and in a world that really needs you to be in your full self and to be in service to others in that way. And so that brings us to the end of the month. Well, the 21st, we've got the sun moving into Sag, which is just, I just see Sag as the party room. It's so fun. It's, mutable fire, and there's optimism, there is energy, there is movement, there's enthusiasm. And how great is that to come off of that deep, deep waters of Scorpio to move into that enthusiastic place? Sounds amazing to me. Venus will be joining the sun at the end of the month on the 30th. And then we have Saturn moving direct. You can turn around on if you celebrate or recognize Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving, the 27th. And, as we said, we call him Daddy Saturn. Some of us might be with family of origin. Just a heads up. It's a little bit disorienting when planets, especially bigger planets, social planets, turn around. He went retrograde July 13th. So get your calendars out, get your date books, get your journals out. What was going on around, give or take a week or two on either side of July 13th. And that you might see some patterning, some completion, some closure, a new way of integrating and holding this as it comes in, because the retrograde motion is more internal, and now we're going to go forward again. Mercury stations direct on the 29th. And then one notable mention on the 24th, Mercury and Venus come together in a conjunction. The mind, Mercury, and the heart, Venus, coming together in Scorpio, which just seems like such a nice continuation of that new moon. We already are going into the deeps of the waters. We're going into our, our inner child emotional kind of temperament stuff with the moon, and the consciousness being the sun, and Mercury being the mind, and Cazimi with the sun. And then get a little rest. 4 days later, joins up with the heart. And that's always so wonderful. The heart is how we're processing our emotions. So there's like a continuation of the material that arises during the new moon, and more opportunity to move that through your heart space on the 24th. Okay, full month. So much happening. And like I said, I'm going to pop in with a video about Mercury retrograde, the patterns and themes that come in with that. Make sure to like and subscribe and share this video if you enjoyed it and you found it resonant, or you think of anybody else who that might find this helpful. If you're interested in a birth chart reading, my website is danielleknapp.com, my name.com, and you can book directly on there. And then if you're interested in working together in a therapeutic way, my website for therapy is startwithintherapy.com. And of course, make sure to subscribe to this page. I love sharing on this platform with you guys, and I want to keep it going. So it does more than you know to share these videos and to keep coming back for more. Wishing you many blessings, and I'll be back soon.